We go. Welcome to Faith and Calm. This is class number 289. Can everybody hear me clearly? Yeah. Okay. I
Yes.
assume that says that yes. And today, well, next week is Purim. So we will not have a class because we'll be celebrating Purim. So we have to wrap up our Purim class. And it's one of my favorite times. The classes are fascinating. I'm fascinated by the subject each year. It's surprising how much more there is to learn and to appreciate about this. Today, we're going to talk about the battle with Amalek a little bit because that is the theme of that was one of the big themes of Purim, not the only theme. How they want to wipe us out in every single generation, and Haman was a descendant of Amalek, of Agag, Haman Agagi, and we are next week on Shabbos. Yes. What? If I only remember it, tell me the title for. And that helps me too, so that I remember and stay track on what's the class is about. Okay. And I hope my wife has something good to say about that too. Yes, you have something interesting, a story? No? Yes, I have a story. Oh, good. She has a story. So hang around. There will be a story here. Um, so uh, and in general, we know that the outline of the story because we're going to read it on this coming Shabbos called Parshas Zachor, which we always read the week before Purim, which we should remember what Amalek tried to do to us, that he tried to wipe us out. We had just left Egypt. We just had the splitting of the Yam Suf. We had just received the Torah. And there was Amalek. He came out of far away, not the country we were going to. We were going to Canaan. He didn't come from there. He came from another country. He came a long distance into the wilderness just to fight with us because he just hated the Jews. An irrational, chutzpahdik, completely illogical hatred of just the whole idea of Jews. They have to be out of this, they're destroyed from this world. And therefore, God says that you have to have war with Amalek, and I will have war with Amalek for all generations, and he will be the only nation of the world that is not redeemable. In other words, it says time of Mashiach that all the nations will speak refined and will all bear with their shoulders the yoke of God. They will all serve Hashem. They will all serve the Jews, except for Amalek. He has to be completely wiped out. So the Rebbe asked a mimer from 1955 what is this all about and what is the lesson for us personally today, specifically about that. Why do we learn from this? Because this has to have something to do with what the Rebbe calls our avoda. In other words, our personal inner life. It's not only an external war that we have to have. There's a battle going on inside of us, and that's what the class is about. How to talk to that part of ourselves that it doesn't necessarily respond well to godliness. Because, as Tanya teaches us, there is two souls. There is a godly soul and there is an animal soul. The animal soul is not bad, but it has a different agenda and a different function than the godly soul. Now, the animal soul, you have to know, is not the same thing as the Yetzer Hara. I just got a great picture of that from them listening to this class. So it's not because the Yetzer means an inclination. There's, you tend to build it up after years, an inclination, but it isn't a whole soul. What do I mean by a soul? So a soul, in Chassidus, we teach us, has a mind, an intellect, a seichel. It has a ruach, which is emotions, midos, and it has a nefesh, which is the action part. And those are the three parts of the soul that comes into the body. And then there are transcendental parts of the soul that we talk about, the chaya and yechida, which is the parts that are beyond what is. We have a direct experience, but it has a very much a control and an effect on us. And we'll speak a little bit about that, but our main focus will be on the part that we can relate to. So each of the two souls, if you're still following with me, the godly soul and the natural and the animal soul has both these three things: intellect, emotions, and action. The animal soul is not a bad thing in itself. It's the part of us that's really concerned with the preservation of me. It's narcissistic. It cares about my body, my comfort. It wants me to have a nice time. It wants me to not to be embarrassed. It's concerned about those very tangible parts of my life or things that are close to being tangible that really that that you can immediately relate to. Like what they call them creature comforts. It wants creature comforts, which is not bad. The Judaism does not say that's bad. And by the way, don't deny that because denying that part is exactly the whole problem. It just comes back and bites you, because if you start pretending like, oh, I'm an angel, like, yeah, until somebody insults you or yells at you or makes you feel like a shamata, and then all of a sudden, like the people who say, I'm not an emotional person. I can't say I love you. I don't get warm. I don't lovey-dovey and so forth. And then all of a sudden, you do something to the person. All of a sudden, you find that this person has an anger problem, like the word. Oh, well, you don't have emotions? Oh, you do have emotions. You're just not in touch with those emotions. That's the problem. Okay, so there you go. Somebody laughs. So I think I related to somebody explain something here. So that's what you see. I relapsed to that part too. So yeah. So the Rebbe starts with the godly soul. So you have to bear with me a little bit, but he wants to start with the godly soul because the whole point is not to ultimately is to elevate everything, and therefore you should start with the godly soul because the animal soul just take is going to take you down into your material life very quickly, and you need to bring it up. So what do I mean by this? So let's talk about the godly soul a little bit. So the intellect, the emotions, and the action of the godly soul. The intellect of the godly soul is trying to understand and comprehend and grasp godliness because it senses that there's something greater there, and I need to be involved. I need to be connected to that. And it tries with its bina, its understanding, to try and understand that. So you learn Hasidus, you get a geschmack out of it, Hasidus, you learn something godly about it, and you start being able to see the unity and the unbelievable. That's why we spend so much time in the prayers in the morning. Every shacharis, most of the prayers is about praise of God. Why do we do that? Because we need to, think on a little higher level about, it's just this amazing force of godliness that comes down into every part of the world, and it's not separate. God is not afraid of going into every little, as we've talked about in the previous classes, every low, difficult situation, and there's godliness there too, and so forth. And it's the truth of the matter. And so as soon as the resistance disappears, so that's the intellect, and it tries to talk to the emotions, which means to experience godliness. You hear music, you hear something lofty, you hear something spiritual, and it's not just an intellectual thing. You actually emotionally relate to it. And then there's the action, and the action can be also very much motivated. In fact, sometimes, you hear people and they say, Rabbi Weiwei gave an interesting example. He said, there was from talking to people. So there are different people have different struggling with different things. So one was feeling really bad because this teenage kid got him so mad that he was beginning to think, I just wish that this kid wasn't my kid. This kid wasn't, I didn't have to deal with this kid. And then you, of course, feel guilty for that. You say, what kind of a parent I am that I hate my kid so much? But the kid triggered something in the person. It's real. So if you deny it, right, you deny that they're doing that, you're not getting anywhere. So you have to sort of acknowledge it. But on the other hand, you still, if you ask the person, even at that point in time where he was so angry with his child because they did something so hurtful, and you said, we could get rid of that kid, you say, no way, it's my kid. So there's a part, even in action, we would never do that. So even if the emotions isn't what gives the nefesh its existence. The connection is there, regardless of whether the emotions are there or the mind are there. There is a nefesh connection to God, just the same as there's a nefesh to the child. And the same thing with the emotions. The emotions are there, even if you don't necessarily intellectually connect with them and so forth. So you can have a guy who who learned very early on that not to cry, not to show his emotions, and so he's very good at giving the Divrei Torah at the Kiddush, and he can even talk about emotions on an intellectual way at the Kiddush, and everybody likes him, and he's a very good Baal Chesed, and he's ahead of the tzedakah. He's always involved with Chesed activities and so forth like that. But when he comes home and he talks to his wife and she doesn't want a speech, she wants real emotions. He says he gets scared because you're going into a place that I learned to turn off. So that's a problem. So that's that the emotion is there. The problem is that it's just very hard for him to open up to it because he's so used to expressing himself intellectually. So that's also the intellect affects the emotions. It basically what we have here is as follows: we have intellect isn't the source of the emotions. You can have the emotions without the intellect, as we see with children. They have emotions, but they don't necessarily think about them. But when you have an intellectual reason to have the emotion, it's a stronger emotion. And the same thing when you have an intellect and an emotion and the action, then the prayers are stronger, the actions are stronger, everything is more comes alive, which is what Hasidus is largely teaching you on the avoda level, is how to take your mind and align it with your emotions and turn that into action so that when you give a tzedakah or you say hello to somebody, you greet them, or anything else that you do is actually alive intellectually and alive emotionally. All right, so that's all talking about the godly soul and how we serve God with our mind and our emotions and our actions. What about the animal soul? As I said, the animal soul is all about taking care of itself. And it doesn't speak on this level about connecting to God, emotionally relating to God, feeling unity, trust, and so forth. It's sort of like a billy goat that comes up to a fence, and there's a sign there that says, "Don't go across this fence and don't eat the grass." And the goat goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I want it. The same thing with kids, sometimes they're all emotions, and when you're trying to teach them, and they have these, emotions, and you're giving them a Torah class, and they're going, this does not compute. I don't care. I'm not listening. You talk to the dog and you say you shouldn't go poop on the couch. It doesn't hear you. It's an animal. And it's a very interesting thing. I don't know if you ever rode a horse. Horses sense when the owner is in control. So when the nefesh elokis, it has a way to get in touch with the animal soul, and that's through intellect, because the animal soul also has an intellect. If it's not taught what to think about, if it's raised in a non-Toradic environment, where all the whole point is to just take care of number one, then it thinks that that's the whole thing, and it puts all its intellect into the emotions and the actions of the animal soul, which means make sure that I get the praise I get, make sure I get the creature comfort I get, make sure I have fun times, make sure I'm enjoying my life, enjoying having fun, getting all the things, the money, all those other kinds of stuff. So the mind will go and be used for all of that. But that mind is actually open. This is the big thing. It's open to hearing something more because you see, being an animal soul is a very lonely experience. It's very disconnected. It's very non-trusting. It's all about itself. And if when the godly soul starts talking to it, it starts saying, you don't have to protect yourself. God is in charge of everything. There's trust here. There's emunah here. There's faith here. There's connection here. There's love here. And it's from God. And he's more powerful than anything else. If you can find the right emotional way to explain it to the intellect of the animal soul, it says, I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to be always worried. I don't want to be always fearful. I don't want to be taking care of myself. I don't always want to be worried about my health. I don't want to always worry about my money. I don't always want to be, I don't want that. I want to know. And it will listen to you. It will listen. So he gave a fascinating example that I actually know is very true. When you ride on a horse, if you ever did, the horse senses the fact that the owner doesn't know where it's going or how to do it. And it will bite your feet and it will run into the trees and it will do all sorts of other things. That's why they get very docile horses for those, for those dude camps and so forth, so forth. Because a horse is a wild creature. But when it senses that the owner knows exactly what it's doing, the rider knows what he's doing, it'll take you places fast and over and leaping and all sorts of other kinds of stuff. So the animal soul is very happy to have that direction. And by the way, so are children in the classroom. They like the fact that a parent is in charge. They don't want to be in charge of the classroom, disrupting it. They like the fact that there's order in the house, that things are clean. They're disturbed when everything is going crazy and they're in charge. So the animal soul likes the fact that the godly soul is. But the thing is, you have to talk to it in a certain way. How do you have to talk to it? You have to talk to it on a way that it relates to, which means as follows. This was another interesting example. It says, Divrei hachachim benachas nishma. The words of a hacham are heard quietly. So it's a very interesting thing. If you have you have a couple in a house, and they're yelling and screaming at each other. Why are they yelling and screaming at each other? Nobody else is there. They're all by themselves. They're in the same room. It's because emotionally you're not connecting to me. There's no relationship here. And therefore you have to yell very loud. But when they're in love and they're connected with each other, they can whisper. Why are they whispering? Why are they quiet? There's nobody spying on them. There's no Gestapo trying to listen in. It's because, you can speak quietly. So, when there's a connection, then words go in. It's easy to go through to connect because you trust the other person. You have to develop that sense of trust to talk to your animal soul. This is the conversation we have to have. This is the conversation we have to show the animal soul, that the godly soul is actually it's connected to the real truth. And it goes, wow, I want that. Yeah, I don't want my fake reality and my disconnected reality. I want the real reality of the reality of the entire universe and how God is all in control. Now, just to wrap up a little bit about those higher levels of the soul that I said we would talk about. So, Amalek is the idea of completely irrational, unthinking hatred of the Jews. The Jews have thought that they were very smart with Hamas, right? We're smart and Western and so forth, and we make this idea of a green line, and they can't go over it, and we have high tech. And somebody never sent the message to Hamas because Hamas is Amalek, and therefore they don't care. They think they Hamas is Amalek because they don't care about anything. They're completely irrational. You can give them health medical facilities, you can take them to your hospitals, you can give them aid and so forth, and the only thing they do is, I want to hate and kill and wipe out Jews and create massacres all the way to Tel Aviv and to wipe out every single Jew, and that is still their charter. It is an irrational, unthinking, completely. And the Jews would never bother them if they would just stay by themselves, and yet they feel they have to go attack the Jews and so forth. It is an Amalekite attack against the Jews. And so Jews keep trying to say, well, you can negotiate. We have the plans. We'll have a, thing. Trump tries to make plans with Iran and so forth like that. It doesn't work because he doesn't realize that this is a completely irrational thing. So that is what Moshe was told. You have to, in order to deal with Amalek, you cannot deal with it necessarily intellectually or with reasoning or arguments and so forth. You have to realize with the parts of the soul which are always connected to Hashem. What do I mean by that? When somebody sees godliness and sees something, you can't argue your way out of it. You can bring all the proofs and saying it didn't really happen. The person's going to say, no, I experienced this. The same thing of the soul's powers of transcendence, amuna, faith. It is a part of us that knows that there is something in charge of this universe and you can't explain it away. It is that there's ultimately at the core of this reality, there's truth and there's godliness. That is what we have to fight Amalek with in before Purim. That's what we have to fight the forces of Amalek right now with. We have to fight it with a sense of the Chaya and the Yechida of the Jewish soul. And that is what Moshe was told. And choose for me people who are connected to me, to Moshe, because Moshe means I was drawn out from the waters. We have to utilize that power of ourselves that's saying, you know what? It's not just a logical thing to realize, to connect. It really is the world without love and without spiritual and without a higher without we have musicians here, without the music of the soul and the music of the music and the beauty of this universe and so forth is an awful place. And that source of that is not purely a mathematical equation. There's something deeper involved in that. I don't know how to put my name on it because it's not an intellectual thing, but that is what is the truth of this world is. And that is how we fight the Amalek in this world. So we capped it up a little bit with recap here and so forth. It's very important to talk to yourself. It's an important conversation to have and to realize your animal soul is not lost. It's trying to do the best it can with the tools it can. And that's why we're fearing fear and pain and anxiety and all these other kinds of stuff. And therefore, the way to actually deal with it is to actually give that conversation. And with that, I'll turn the call over to my wife and let her take over. Welcome there, Beth. So happy to see you.
Sorry, I missed it. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay. They can always listen to it on the recap on YouTube. Okay.
that's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I always go back to watch the YouTube recording.
You
Ah,
so I just listened to it and I'm definitely going to replay it because it's such an important class, such an interesting concept, such an important class. Hello to everybody. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. Does anybody have any questions before mine is going to be much shorter. Anybody have any questions?
I had a quick question. Why did Hashem make Amalek? Like, what was the rationale behind that we have to have this
I
nation?
just have to put on weaker glasses. I'll be
Oh,
right back.
okay.
weaker. Wow, I could use stronger probably.
Can't see. No, those are my reading glasses, and so when I look at the screen, it's too powerful. So, okay. So, why did Hashem create evil? Why did Hashem create why did Hashem create the world? Why couldn't we just be in heaven, right?
Right.
So Hashem wants to share, and Hashem created the world. And
Oh,
but
sorry.
before he created the world, 2,000 years before he created the world, your neshama is much older than the world. And millennia before the universe was created, Hashem consulted the neshamas of what would be the Jewish people. And he said, Jewish people, I have a taiva, I have a desire. I want to create a world, and I want to create a universe, and I'm gonna do the stuff you can't do. I'm gonna make the mountains, the galaxies, everything like that. But I want you to take that world, which is it's neither good nor bad. It has the potential for both, and I want you to be in charge. You're going to be my partner, and you're going to not only you're going to take my beautiful world, and you're going to turn it into a good world. In order to turn it into a good world, a person has to have an option. I mean, excuse me, in order for us to actually be partners, to actually be creators, like Hashem is a creator, there has to be the potential to drop down the hole. There has to be evil in the world. There has to be the option to and there has to be the obligation to eradicate evil, and there has to be evil because otherwise if we're programmed only to do good, we're merely robots. And Hashem didn't want that. He wanted not robots to share this experience with, but he wanted the Jewish neshamas to take on that job. And truthfully, when all is said and done, you're not going to be when we can look back on our life, you're not going to be impressed by, wow, I looked so pretty that day, or wow, I gave such a nice speech that day. You're not going to be That's not what's going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy is you're going to scroll back to the most horrible times in your life, and you're going to say, wow, I had a good reaction that day. Look how I tried. Look how I stomped on my bad thoughts. Look how I turned and did a mitzvah instead. And you're going to want to replay it and replay it and replay it because that's what gives a human being pleasure. That's what gives a neshama pleasure to see, to see that you actually did something. You changed the world for the better. And Hashem gave us that. He gave us that ability. If he didn't create challenge, we would be robots. And Hashem doesn't want robots. Hashem wants thinking, feeling human thinking, feeling human beings that have an internal guide. We have an neshama, we have the Torah, which is our guidebook, but you, and in the end, you have to choose it every second of every day. You have to make the right choice. Is this going to further God's plan, or is this going to darken God's world? So so anyway, is any other questions on that? Okay, so I'm gonna be very brief, and first I'm going to start with the four things that I always start with. Number one, we are in an unbelievable time. We are in the unveiling, the unrolling of the redemption of the entire world from the state of, from the state where
I
there
have to put my feet up.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry. Okay, so let me just I think it's not going to happen again anyway. So so anyway, we are in the unfolding the redemption. The way I know it is simply because the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was never wrong about any public pronouncement that he ever made, and he made incredibly logic defying predictions, they all came true, and this one is also coming true. And if you learn the talks of the Rebbe, the last 2 years that the Rebbe was giving talks, it is unfolding just as the Rebbe said. And also I want to add that the Rebbe, as logic defying as it is, the Rebbe told us the Rebbe, a person who never used the word I, who never took credit for himself. In the last 2 years, it was when he was speaking, it was like he gave us so many totally in the open hints that he is Mashiach, and that the grave will have no dominion over Mashiach. Anyway, so number one, we're in extraordinary time. Number two, you and I our neshamas were handpicked to be in the world at this time because we have if you're here, it means if you're here, it's because you have a vital role to play. Number three, we were given everything we need to do in order to do our job well, in order to navigate this difficult timescape. And we were given the Torah, which is our guidebook, and we were given the mitzvahs, which are our power tools. The mitzvahs not only change the world, they change you. The mitzvahs are the most powerful self-actualization tool that ever appeared on the world. Every single mitzvah is like, it's an incredible thing. The mitzvahs are not, yes, there are things we do, but more than things we do, they are gifts to ourselves. And finally, what we're doing tonight, learning about the redemption, actively advances it. The Rebbe told us there's no way to speed up the redemption more than by learning about it. So I just want to tell a little story. First, I want to say happy birthday, Moshe Rabbeinu. Happy birthday, Moses. Tonight is Moses's birthday. I didn't count the years, but it's his birthday tonight. And the birthday of a holy person is forever holy. And I want to thank, I got the story that I'm going to tell. I got it from Rabbi Zalman Tachtel, who is the Chabad of Kansas, and of University of Kansas. So so he is he told a story about a man who a rabbi, Rabbi Joshua Gordon, also known as Yehoshua Gordon, and he exemplified a person. It's his 10th yard site just recently, and he passed away 10 years ago. And this person exemplified somebody who had his animal soul in control. He was constantly figuring out what can I do in this moment that glorifies Hashem the most, that advances Hashem's plan the most. And so anyway, so the story that I'm going to tell, he was a Chabad emissary in the Valley in California. Do I know where the Valley is? No, I only know where San Francisco is and Berkeley is and Los Angeles is. The Valley is somewhere there. So anyway, so he in the Valley, he started tens of Chabad houses, not one Chabad house, tens of Chabad houses. And he was an extremely active person, and he also gave a tremendous amount of classes, and they're now on Chabad.org. And he's had millions of viewings of his classes. Can you imagine millions of viewings? Anyway, so the story about him is told by somebody named Baruch Cohen. Baruch Cohen is a religious attorney. He's a Shomer Shabbos, a Shabbos observant attorney who also happened to be quite an expert in Jewish law, not just secular law, but Jewish law. And at the time of the story that he tells, he was representing Rabbi Gordon's Chabad house, Chabad of the Valley in Central California. He was representing them in a civil lawsuit. What was the civil lawsuit all about? The civil lawsuit was brought by apparently there was a donor to Chabad, gave lots of money to Chabad, and this donor, I don't know, maybe had a bad business deal or whatever. The donor went bankrupt. And so, since he went bankrupt, he has a lot of creditors. He has a lot of people that he owed money to, and now he's bankrupt. And so, some of those people who lost a lot of money to this donor said it's not he should not have given donations to the Chabad house of that magnitude when he had whatever, I don't know what it was, what the magnitude of his debt was. So this was a case that went on for a while, and and um, and there was a lot of intense questioning, a lot of depositions, a lot of stuff like that. So one time during one of the days when they're meeting in intense negotiations with the donors' attorney, not the donors' attorneys, the creditors, the people who are owed money by this guy who went bankrupt, and Chabad who got money from this guy who became bankrupt. Um, uh, Obviously before he became bankrupt. So it was intense, intense, intense. And during one of the breaks, Rabbi Gordon, he pulls Baruch, his attorney, Baruch Gordon, to the side, and he says, "You know what? I think that the attorney from the other side, doesn't he look Jewish to you? Do you get a little bit of Jewish vibes from him? I'm getting Jewish vibes from him, and I just think he might be a Jew." And his attorney said, "Okay, but this is not something we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with a multi-million dollar. We're dealing with a big case, and we have to think about important things. You stand to lose a lot of money here." And Rabbi Gordon said, "Yeah, but I get this Jewish feeling from him." Anyway, and Rabbi Gordon said, "You know what? We're on lunch break. I have to run to my car and get something." And so the attorney thought that the attorney figured, oh, he's going to get more papers that will support our case. And meantime, Rabbi Gordon comes back and he's got tefillin in his hand. That's what he went to get from his car. And he said, "I'm going to try and put tefillin on." And the guy said, the attorney said, "Don't you dare. What are you talking about? We're involved in a very huge case. This is not a time to put tefillin on somebody. You're out of your mind. You, Rabbi Gordon, you're on the defensive in this thing. You're to lose tons of money." Anyway, they go back into the courtroom, and Rabbi Gordon says to when the other side is questioning him intensely, he stops the conversation. He looks at the attorney for the other side and he said, "How old are you? Are you Jewish?" And his attorney is about to faint. And the attorney from the other side said, "Excuse me, I'm the one who's asking questions here." And he said, and but he keeps asking him these questions. "Are you Jewish?" And so he tells the secretary, tells the recorder, whoever's the one who's recording this stuff, he says, "Let's go off the record for a minute." And he says, "Yes, I am Jewish and I'm 50 years old, and 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 that's it." And so Rabbi Gordon starts to tell him, "Did you ever put on tefillin? I would love to put on tefillin with you." And the guy says to him, "This Jewish conversation is over. We're going back on the record, and we are not discussing tefillin." And anyway, so anyway, there's a hiatus. There's an adjournment for a while, for 2 months, and then they come back to the court, and the judge asks an incredibly interesting question. I'm gonna unplug that. No, I can't do this now. Okay.
When was this? A long time ago, or what was this?
It had to be, well, he passed away 10 years ago. So, oh
Oh,
my
oh,
gosh, my face
so
is
like
huge.
20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you're gonna have to put up with a huge face. My camera does whatever it wants to do. We have no control over it. So anyway, 2 months later, there had been an adjournment for 2 months, and then when we came back, when they came back, the judge says to he says to Rabbi Gordon, I would like to know what Jewish law says about a case like this. When there's somebody, he gives a lot of money, but really he's in a precarious situation. He owns a lot of other people money. He had what he didn't declare bankruptcy when he gave the donations to Chabad House, but what would Jewish law say about that? And on the spur of the moment, Rabbi Gordon delivers this amazingly detailed, fascinating discussion about what Jewish law would say about this whole thing. And everybody's like, wow, that's impressive. And anyway, the judge says, you know what, you guys? I think both parties should sit together for a while and try and settle this case. That's what I feel. I'm going to adjourn for a while for you guys to sit and discuss it without me. And so the judge goes, and they sit around the negotiating table, and they're negotiating back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And finally, Rabbi Gordon says, listen, I have a deal for you. I've come up with a decision. He said, the latest offer, the latest compromise that you guys offered us, I will accept it on one condition. And everybody's on the edge of their chair. And he says, if your defense attorney puts on tefillin with me, I will take your latest offer. And they're like, everybody's shocked. They quickly confer. The attorney says, I agree, as long as it's not filmed and I can do it in the privacy of my own office. And that's what they do. And so who is this? So the case is settled. So who is this Rabbi Gordon? He is somebody who existed on a level where he's constantly dealing with the godly soul. He's on the level of the godly soul, and he doesn't pay attention to all the garbage underneath. He just pays attention to what does Hashem want from me in this precise moment. And he figured he wants this guy's tefillin because if there's a thing, if a Jewish man does not put on tefillin even once in his life, it's it's very, very, very bad for his neshama. It's very, very, very bad for his neshama. So anyway, this was so it's an incredibly clarifying, incredibly clarifying question to ask. When your emotions are talking one way, and this is going one way, and that is going one way, and you're angry, and you're upset, and you're under pressure, and all this stuff. Ask yourself, what would God want me to do at this minute? And the answer comes, you know. So what would God want me to do? And yeah, if for some reason the answer doesn't come, you can confer with somebody else
Ay, ay, ay.
you can confer with somebody else who is on a higher, maybe a higher, who's done more Torah learning than you have. And sometimes that's extremely clarifying. I mean, that's an awesome, awesome, awesome thing to do. Um, I didn't know if I should take the job that I have this year, and so I spoke to an older woman in Crown Heights, and it was last year on Lag BaOmer, and on Lag BaOmer weekend, and a lot of good things happen on Lag BaOmer. I love to go to Crown Heights on Lag BaOmer, but the overriding experience for me from that trip is simply looking at her face, looking at the face of somebody who has had a lifetime of mitzvahs. It's just so, it's, I have to say, this woman's in her 80s, wrinkles, all this kind of stuff, but she was beautiful. She was just beautiful. So anyway, you can help yourself by asking yourself these questions, asking yourself, what would God want from me right now? That's incredibly clarifying. And
Uh-oh.
if you need still more help, then you can if you need still more help, then you can reach out to somebody who has worked on themselves a tremendous amount. And I'm going to turn off the recording. And if anybody has questions, I am pleased to